Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. This time I'm going to be upgrading the Ryzen 3 budget PC that I recently built with this GTX 1050 Ti graphics card. This will significantly improve our machine's gaming and video editing performance, so let's go and open up this rather exciting box. So, here we have our graphics card, our GTX 1050 Ti, which as you can see is an MSI model, their gaming X version of this technology, and this cost me £149.89 in January 2019, and at that time it cost about $180 in the United States. And if you're wondering why I bought this particular model and why did I bought a GTX 1050 Ti, we should perhaps look at this table. And this shows the 4 cards I've really considered, and as you can see I did think seriously about getting a lower end NVIDIA technology, the GeForce GTX 1050, and I also considered a couple of AMD cards, the Ryzen RX 560 and the NVIDIA RX 570. And it's certainly the case that the Ryzen RX 570 is probably slightly more powerful than the GTX 1050 Ti, but as you can see it also uses a lot more power. And that means it's going to actually produce a lot more heat in the case, give us potentially cooling issues, maybe stability issues, life expectancy issues. And so, as I've always had very good experiences with NVIDIA's GeForce technology, I decided to go with a GTX 1050 Ti. So, let's get it opened up. I think we have to flick it over. Exciting on the back as well. These boxes sort of entice you in, don't they? They're very exciting, but we just do this, flick it around here. We can open up like that. And like that, and then which way up are we? We're back to the way probably. We are, I think, we're that way. This is a rather large box. Oh, here we are. Down there on the floor. And where are we going next? There must be something in here. Let's see what's in here. This is, it's cards and drivers and exciting little leaflets and things like that. But we'll put those over there. Running out of space here, and in the box itself is here we are, little leaflet, and here is the card. Wow, this is a real beautiful thing, and we need to get inside there, so I think Mr. Scissors is on hand. There he is, look, and we can just get in here, lovely jubbly, and there we are. Rustle, play hard, stay silent, it says. Let's put this down so we can take a proper look at it and just get it nicely aligned on screen for you there. And one of the things you know when you take this out of the packet, it's quite a heavy object. It's about 527 grams, I think I can tell my fingers there. And the reason it's so heavy is because it's got a couple of heat pipes. It's got a couple of MSI's twin Frozer 6 heat pipes. You can see them sort of, well, at least some of it there. And as you can also see, it's dominated by these 2 great big fans. These are Dual Torx 2.0 92mm temperature controlled fans. And as the strapline on the label indicates, this is supposed to be a nicer, quiet card in use. Partially because the fans here are supposed to be nicer, quiet fans anyway, and partially because the fans won't come on until the card starts to get stressed out. So if you're doing less graphically intensive stuff, the fans won't come on, and then they'll start to cut in, hopefully nice and quietly, when they're needed. And I think we will do, as it says here, remove this label before gaming, and just in general, don't want this piece of plastic on the side of our card. There we are, it looks, doesn't want to come off. Looks much better there without it, and the fans can now freely spin around. That has to be a good thing. And if we just focus for a second on the specs of this card, it's based on an NVIDIA GP107 GPU, which uses their Pascal architecture, and somewhere under here, that GPU, somewhere hidden under all this big heatsink and fans, the chip there contains about 3.3 billion individual transistors. And I know that's probably not that many these days on some chips, but I still find that extraordinary. All those individual components sitting in the chip inside this card. And in terms of the clock speed, MSI clocks the GPU here at between 1392 and 1493 megahertz, depending on the mode that the user selects in the control software you get for this card. So you can run it in either silent mode or gaming mode or overclock mode at slightly different speeds. And the GPU has 768 CUDA cores And the card comes equipped with 4 GB of 7008 MHz GDDR5 128-bit RAM. If we look down to the base of the card here, we can see the connector. Let's just take off the covering. There we are, nice shiny connector. This is a PCIe 3.0 connector, a x16 connector, which will plug into the PCIe 3.0 x16 connector on our motherboard. That's kind of handy. And we also need on this card additional power for that. It needs a 6-pin PCIe power connector for its 75-watt power requirement. If we look at the end of the card, we can see the monitor connectivity, or at least we could if it hadn't got all these plastic covers on. So let's just quickly get rid of those. And there we are. And we can now see very clearly we've got an HDMI socket, HDMI 2.0B, which supports a 3840 by 2160 or 4K output. And then along from that, we've got a display port, which will also support 4K. It even support 8K. And we've also got a dual link DVI-D, digital only a DVI output, and that will support up to a 2560 by 1600. This all said, whilst this card will output a 4K and even an 8K display, if you want to use this card to play modern games, you should really be thinking of it as a 1080p, as an HD piece of hardware. If we look at the other end of the card, just for completeness, it doesn't invoke quite as much excitement. We can see a nice shiny heatsink, that's basically it. But if we turn to the top of the card, if I just hold it up for you like this, things are a little bit more interesting. We can again see one of the Frozer heat pipes. That's exciting, isn't it? And we can also see the 6-pin PCIe power connector. We can see we've got 5 user controllable LEDs. I understand that also the MSI logo here also illuminates. So there we are. This is the card we've got for our PC, our lovely GTX 1050 Ti, and I think it's now high time we went and fitted it in our patiently waiting PC. So, I've now booted up our patiently waiting PC because before we fit the new graphics card, it's a really good idea to remove the drivers and other software associated with our current graphics hardware, which here is the Radeon Vega 8 graphics which we have on the Ryzen 3 2200G APU. And you might remember these are controlled by this nice little Radeon settings panel. And we might get away not removing the current software and drivers, but because we're moving from AMD Radeon graphics hardware to NVIDIA graphics hardware, it's a very good idea to get rid of them so we don't have any potential conflicts with our new graphics card. So what we're going to do is to go down here to Settings, and then we'll go to Apps, and then we'll go down here and we'll get to AMD Software. And we can't just uninstall all the AMD software, we have to modify what is there. So we'll click on that and say yes. And we can now see all the different AMD software installed on this system, most of which is nothing to do with the graphics system. So for example, that is the driver for the Southbridge chip on the motherboard. So we want to make sure we uncheck things that have to remain. So we'll uncheck GPIO driver, that driver, power, ban, and PSP, and that. So all we're going to remove is the display driver, Radeon settings, and the HDMI audio driver, which is clearly associated with the graphics system. So we can now click on the uninstall, and there we are, and it wants to restart now, but I'm not going to restart now. I'm going to close things down, and then we can fit our new graphics card. So, the moment has come to open up the case, so let's get off the side panel. And there we are, we're now back, putting that over there, inside the computer. And we need to fit the graphics card into the PCIe slot, the x16 PCIe slot. But before we can do that, we need to remove 2 of the PCIe slot blanking plates so that the graphics card can actually have its connectors pointing out the back of the machine. So I'll take Mr. Screwdriver and we'll start to remove these screws like this. There's one. And the other. And we can now take our graphics card and insert it, lowering it down gently into our PC. And there we are, it goes in like that. Oh yes, what a fantastic looking piece of hardware that is. So We just now have to put in the screws back to hold it in place. So I'll just do that. There we are. Mr. Screwdriver has helped us out. It's all nicely clicked into place at the bottom. And the final thing we need to do is to connect some power to the 6-pin PCIe power connector up here. And oh look, there's some connectors all available. That's handy, isn't it? So we want to plug one of those in like that. And I'll now just push these cables out of the way. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in cable management in this episode, because in the final episode of the series we're going to be doing even more inside the case, fitting more fans and lighting and things like that. So for now that is fine. So I think, having checked the graphics card is properly seated, is nice and secure, we'll just put the side panel back on the case. And I'll now go in search of some drivers for our new graphics card. Right, here we are back with the PC up and running and with our output coming from the new graphics card. And the graphics card itself is looking very nice with all its LED illumination inside the case. Anyway, back on the desktop, if we go to this PC and right click and show properties, you'll see in Device Manager we are now showing that we've got on the display adapters the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. And I have to point out, when I first rebooted this machine with a new graphics card in it, that actually said Microsoft Basic Display Adapter. And I couldn't get a frame rate I could record from that adapter, so what I had to do was to go to Properties on that adapter and then click on Update Driver. As you can see in these still images I did manage to grab, and after that process had finished, we had the NVIDIA driver here. So if I just do Properties on that, you'll see there it is. That's what I just did, but I updated the driver to get to that. Now, you probably won't have to do that, but because I'm making a film, I had to do that or I wouldn't have been able to record this sequence. Anyway, Windows has picked up a driver there for us, but I'm sure it's not the most recent driver, it's not the best driver. So if we go to the web, this is the page on the NVIDIA website where we can pick up the latest drivers. And I've filled in the details here for the card we've got, the GeForce GTX 1050 Ti, and we can search for the latest driver. And hopefully in a second it'll show us something, and there we are. And what we want is the first one there, very recent driver for NVIDIA graphics card. So I'll just click on download, and you'll see, in fact, I've downloaded this already. It's a 0.5 GB download. I thought we'd save a bit of time. So that's already been downloaded, so I'll cancel on that, come out of this, and hopefully down here somewhere I've got the folder waiting with that download in. So all we have to do now is to click on this to run it up. Windows will probably check if we want to do it. Yes, it will, and we'll go yes. And we'll go OK on that as it just extracts its files. And it's now just checking out our system. And here we are, we can now install the drivers. And as you can see here, we've got two options. We can either install NVIDIA Graphics Driver and GeForce Experience, or just the NVIDIA Graphics Driver. And personally, I don't want GeForce Experience on this machine. You might find it useful if you do lots of gaming to sort of help with stuff like that, but actually I think it's much better just to have the drivers. NVIDIA GeForce Experience, in my view, is a massive piece of bloatware you don't need on your machine, so I'm just going to install the drivers. So I'll agree and continue. And I think I'm going to do a custom install because, again, I don't trust all of this. Yes, we've got a graphics driver there we clearly want. Vision controller, vision driver, that's for 3D. I've got no potential use for that. HD audio driver I clearly need because there'll be audio from the HDMI. GeForce Experience we're not going to have. Physics System Software, that might be useful if you need it in certain games for physics simulations, but I'm not going to need that one either. And so there we are, and we can now, I think, click on Next. And it seems, as with AMD and Radeon, they're going to give us adverts as the thing goes through, but hopefully fairly soon it'll all be installed. And there we are, it's finished. That took about 3 minutes in the real world, so I can close that down. And if we look down here and yes, we've got a little NVIDIA thing there. Can we open that up? And Control Center. And yes, we now have a thing to control our NVIDIA graphics with all its exciting and wacky things available. So we'll leave that for now because there's something else we need to install really. I'm going to go back to a Chrome, and it would also be good to install the MSI app for this card. We've got the basic drivers, but we haven't got the app to control things like the LED lighting on the card and the different modes. So here I am on the MSI webpage for the card we have, and if we go to Utilities and we pick up our operating system, we will find here the utility I want to install is the MSI Gaming app. So we'll download that and save it again in our nice little folder over there. And there we are. Let's open that thing up and extract the files. That'll be okay. And there we are, and hopefully we can run that thing up. Do we want to install it? Yes, we do. We'll do it in English. That's fine. And I suppose we should close down other things as it suggests probably a good idea. There we are. I will accept the agreement. That'll be fine. Install. And I'm not going to subscribe to the newsletter, but we will launch the gaming app. And there it is, look. So we've got a little app here. This is the first time I'm seeing it, but it looks nice and straightforward. We can switch the card into an overclock mode, a gaming mode, or a silent mode if we want to run it a little bit less noise. And we've also got here the LED control. So in theory, we can animate the LEDs. So if we cut to a shot of the LEDs, you can see the LEDs there, and then, well, there we are, we'll come back again, I guess. And we'll now go to, say, animation. What about, what should we have? Breathing. What does a breathing look like? And we'll apply that. It's sort of undulating, isn't it? A bit like your PC is digitally breathing, I guess. That's what it's trying to emulate. Not quite sure exactly what I anticipated, but that's quite nice. Let's try a few other things. We've got flashing. What's flashing going to do? We'll apply flashing. It's sort of very short little flashes, isn't it? I thought it'd be more, yes, more stimulating than that. Never mind. Let's try presumably double flashing is the same sort of thing again. Yes, double flashing is not really very taken with that, I'm afraid. And finally we've got random. What is random? Presumably it's a mix of the other ones. Again, I'm not really inspired with random. I think we're going to go back to breathing is going to be my default on this. There we are. And of course you can also turn the LED lighting off if you want with the controls here. And just to show you some of the other buttons, we should have a look, I guess, at everything. There's a button here to go into eye rest, which is presumably where we can go into different modes to, oh yes, that's clearly taking the blue out the screen, isn't it? And these are various settings for, whoa, very exciting there. I think we'll go back to our default colors on that. There's a, what's a snowflake? A cooler boost. Boost the cooler, apparently. I don't know if you can hear that, but I can. My fan is now going bonkers. How do I come out of that? Presumably I change modes again. Yes, and that'll turn off our boosted cooler. And presumably over here there is same functions again. Anyway, there we are. We've successfully installed our drivers and this gaming app for the GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. Right. Having fitted our PC with its new graphics card, I thought we should test out its performance, and as you can see I'm about to run some tests in PassMark, so performance test 9. But before I do that, I just want to show you I've installed DaVinci Resolve, the video editor, and this runs very well indeed. If I go into a playback here, as you would expect, I'm sure it plays very nicely, but very, very smooth, dissolves. You might remember we tested video playback in Kdenlive under Linux in the last video, which worked very well. Here we're using a much more demanding video editor, and again it's running very well indeed. Very easily scrubbable timeline. You could certainly do really good video editing using DaVinci Resolve and the Ryzen 3 2200G equipped with the GTX 1050 Ti. Anyway, let's leave DaVinci Resolve. Just wanted to show you that worked absolutely fine on this system. Okay, we'll save things if it wants to. And now let's run the PassMark test. So I'll click on the run here, and this will take a while to run through, so I'll move into fast forward and we'll just stop to watch things in real time when we get to the 3D graphics tests. And here we are arriving in the what I call the planes test. I think the DirectX 9 test, which is running very rapidly, well over 100 frames a second, touched 150 frames a second there. This is clearly very impressive. And now here we are in the DirectX 10 test. This is This is really fast. Let's bring up a shot also of the same thing running under the Vega 8 onboard graphics, and you can see the massive difference. We're getting, again, frame rates well over 100 frames a second, varying a lot, down to about 65, up to about 150 there. This went down to about 14 frames a second using the Vega 8 graphics, whereas here it is clearly running very quickly indeed. We've got a massive improvement in performance here in this test flying around these floating islands. That is really very impressive indeed. And now we're off into outer space, the floating jellyfish test, as I call it, DirectX 11, I think. This is running very nicely, but as always, I'm much more interested to see the DirectX 12 test, so let's speed forward to that. And here we are entering hyperspace. Again, I'll give you a comparison with the onboard Vega 8 graphics, and this is just very nice, isn't it? This is running really, really nicely. High frame rate, 60 to 70 frames a second there. It gets penalised in the final score because it's not running in 4K, which I think is a slightly unfair thing to do. This is clearly showing this machine can run 1080p of this type of graphics very well indeed. And there we are. We have a final result, a final PassMark rating of 3776. So we won't do this right now. We won't submit it straight away. But there we are. And the most important thing here is to note that this orange bar is the bar for this particular PC. You can see the individual results here. And here's some baselines I've loaded in. And the top one here is the same machine, but before we fitted this graphics card. So this is using the onboard Vega 8 graphics. So clearly the PassMark score has improved. You would expect that. And if we look to the things like the 2D Mark tests, we have got some clearly improvement in 2D graphics having fitted the graphics card, but particularly when we look at 3D graphics performance, you can see we've had a massive improvement. We've gone from a 2104 to a 6560. That's the really big improvement we've got by fitting the GTX 1050 Ti. Fantastically improved 3D graphics performance. So there we are. I think that's been a very successful upgrade of a Ryzen 3 2200G. In this video, we've added a great deal of graphical power to our Ryzen 3 budget PC, while keeping the cost to about £500 or $550. We've also made the PC look a little bit more exciting with the LEDs on the side of the graphics card, which we can see through the side of the case. And in the next and final video in this series, we're going to go further by adding an LED RGB lighting strip and also two front fans, which are LED illuminated. More information on this build can be found on explainingcomputers.com. But now that's it for another video. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.